So thank you for joining us today for the 12 Days of English. Hopefully your attendance at this English refresher will develop your confidence and skills in all aspects of your work, study and everyday life activities. Patricia, over to you to do the introductions.
Right, thank you. Right, so welcome to the session and thank you for joining us today. So we hope you find the session interesting and enjoyable, and our gifts to you today will come in the form of information related to a variety of English rules, and hopefully you'll be more confident in your use and knowledge related to the conventions of spelling, punctuation and grammar. But we'll do some introductions first. So I'm Patricia Devlin, I'm part of the provider development team. Previous to this, I taught for 20 years and been a subject development leader. And I'll let Helen introduce herself.
Yes, hello everybody, I'm Helen Scanlon. I'm also part of NCFE's provider development team, having worked in education for around 30 years, and my English teaching includes learners at pre-entry level up to PGCE specialist English teacher training courses. And I still continue to learn something new all the time when it comes to English. So we'll get started and have a quick look at what we're going to cover today, which you can see on the screen now. I'd like to start off by sharing our experience of English learning and to reassure you that if we cover anything today that you've not heard of before, please don't worry. It's kind of expected. This is because English learning goes through phases and trends. It can have a different focus or priority depending upon where and when you learned it. We might introduce you to something totally new in this session, and hopefully it'll increase your confidence in some of the main spelling, grammar and punctuation conventions you'll come across in your work and everyday lives. But we're going to start off with a poll. Looking at what we're going to do today, the poll is going to ask you which aspect of it that you feel least confident with. It's a word cloud, so we're going to keep this on the screen. So the idea would be, please let us know, of the 12 topics you can see on the screen that we're covering today, which do you feel the least confident with? So please type your response and it'll come up into the word cloud. Type a word and hit submit, please. It's anonymous. We won't know who tells us what. It's just an overview of what people feel that they are least confident with.
I think you've all got access to your own boxes. So if you move it, because it's covering the screen at the moment.
All right.
It covers
Okay,
part of it.
shall I read them out just to help out? So we've got the Oxford comma. We've got commas in complex sentences, verb tense agreements, countable and uncountable nouns, spelling strategies, apostrophes, word classes, prefixes and suffixes, adjectives, definite and indefinite articles, punctuation and homophones. Any of those make you go, oh no, or which are they? Because that's our subject topics that we're going to cover today. Which of them do you feel least confident with? So we've got some answers coming in already. Thank you for that. And you can actually put more than one as well if you want. If you feel there is more than one, you can add it. So please add whichever ones of those that you can share that you're feeling a little bit less confident with, please. So we've got a mixture. Nouns are coming in, spelling strategies, commas, adjectives, prefixes and suffixes. And these are all terms that the teaching of them, the content of the teaching of this goes in and out of fashion. So you may find that there's something here that you've never heard of, or that you were taught in detail in previous English learning. And that's how it goes. I'm afraid it depends on where and when you learn it as to what the trend is at the time. Okay, I'm going to close the poll shortly. If you haven't had the chance to put any answers in, please do. We do have a few in there, but that's what we're covering today, basically. I'm going to close the poll now.
Can I just say, some people hadn't seen the poll. It's actually in the chat box as well. You can see it in the chat.
So I've closed the poll now, so please pop it into the chat if you have anything you'd like to share that you haven't had the chance to. So let's get started. Let's see what we're going to give you on the first day of English. And it's a comma, but it's not just any comma, it's an Oxford comma. So my first question to everybody is, what is it? Do you know what it is? Please put your ideas or answers into the chat. Especially answer it if you already know what it is and share with everybody. It's not a test, it's a safe space for you to consider what it is before we explain it. I'm going to ask Patricia to tell me what's coming in the chat, if anything yet.
There is typing going on in the chat. We've got some don't knows,
Yeah,
and then some typing going on, which hasn't come through yet.
right. So I'll just give a minute or so to let people put their answers in.
We've got some answers coming through. Used in list to say that two things combined. Before a list, an Oxford comma is a punctuation mark, a comma when it comes before and in a list.
Yeah.
And there's still a few more being typed.
Just hold on another few seconds.
Used at the end of a list, before and or.
Brilliant. Okay, while people are finishing typing, I'm going to say, there's the explanation on the screen now. It's used after the penultimate item on a list to clarify meaning. Now, I was always taught you do not put a comma after the penultimate item on a list. So let's just talk about what that means in practice. How does that actually look? So we're going to share some festive examples. So I'm going to ask you to read through this first sentence. So we will, like ours, probably have been taught that when adding a comma in a list, you don't normally put a comma after the penultimate item on that list. And in this example, it would be the highlighted section after ice skating and before the word and. This is relatively simple and should make sense. If my sentence was, in the second example, it reads like a list, but it could be deemed as meaning that my parents are Santa Claus and Mariah Carey. So in the first example there, it does make sense. The second example, does it read like I love my parents who are Santa Claus and Mariah Carey? And this is where the Oxford comma comes in. To clarify meaning, show that my parents and the additional people, Santa Claus and Mariah Carey, are who I love. And that's where you would see the Oxford comma in a sentence to clarify the meaning of that sentence. So just to recap, when writing a list, you might sometimes add a comma before the word and to clarify meaning. And that is what's known as an Oxford comma. Patricia, has any further comments or questions come into the chat?
Yeah, so we've had some people didn't realise that it was called an Oxford comma. So obviously they knew what it was, but they didn't know that was the term given to it. So
Brilliant.
that's great.
Excellent. Thank you.
So thanks, Helen. So we're moving on to day 2. So
Okay, this is continuing focus on commas, but it's different because it's commas in complex sentences, not in lists like we've just been talking about. So I'm going to start off again by asking everybody to consider, what are commas in complex sentences? How are they used? What do you know about commas in complex sentences? We'll pause again for a moment to allow you to pop your ideas into a chat. Same safe space. If it's not sure, no idea, help, please. That's what you can absolutely type. But if you know what it is and know how to explain them, please pop that into the chat for everyone to benefit from before we start off. Is anybody typing, Patricia?
sorry, I was just having a bit of a cough there, Helen.
Oh, bless you.
So yeah, there's the chats coming in. So we've got a pause. There's still people typing into the chat.
We
To
will talk
separate
about that
two
pause, yeah.
independent clauses.
Oh, fantastic, yeah.
They're commas used to separate two ideas in a single sentence when giving more information.
Yeah.
Separate clauses.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to start talking about them a bit before I actually put our definition of the rule up. So thank you for the people who've put them comments in. Great. When talking about this type of comma, I normally ask about how people were taught them in the past. And as I say, please use the team's reaction to tell me if your experience is the same as mine. So when I learned about commas in complex sentences, I was told to put a comma in a sentence where I would take a breath or make a pause, as people have said. Was anybody else told this? When I think about it, it sounds a bit ridiculous because everyone's different and can talk for longer or shorter depending on their physical makeup. I know I can talk for a long time before taking a breath. I'm an competitive synchronized swimmer, so holding my breath I can do no problem. So how does this rule work with commas in sentences? We take a breath where the comma should be in the sentence when we follow the rules of grammar correctly.
Can I just jump in there, Helen?
Yep.
Everyone's saying yes, they've obviously been told that. And you've had a thumbs up as well on the thing. So yeah, so I think a lot of people have been told that.
Yeah, they really have. And the rule what we're talking about today is on the screen now. The comma should be used to separate out the main and subordinate clauses in the complex sentences. I'm going to show you what I mean now with a couple of examples. So the first example is a complex sentence without commas. If I read it out without pausing, it sounds like this. The man who was excited to be out and about in the city centre went to buy some treats for the party he was hosting. I got to the end of it without a breath, without pausing. That was okay. But if I read it out, taking breaths to show the separation of the main and subordinate clauses, it sounds like this. The man who was excited to be out and about in the city centre went to buy some treats for the party he was hosting. So the second example, the main clause is in black font and the subordinate clause is in our NCFE lilac. So the commas would go after the word man and at the end of the subordinate clause after the word centre. I hope that develops or consolidates your understanding of using commas in complex sentences. Any other questions or comments before we move on?
We have got some in the chat. So we've got one I thought we'd take a breath where we see a comma and then gives more information about the man, the
Yeah,
highlighted part.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's the subordinate clause in lilac. So complex sentences have more than one main and well, they have more than one clause. So that's where you use the commas to separate them out.
We've still got some typing going on, Helen.
Yeah, can wait. I'm glad he was excited to be out and about because he was doing a party. That's lovely.
So we've got the bit in black could be a sentence on its own.
Yes, that's the
Yes.
main clause, exactly. Yeah, the subordinate clause relies on the main clause to make sense.
And we've got two more comments, maybe
Yeah,
three more comments being added.
yeah, we can wait.
Extra info, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, brilliant.
It would still make sense without the lilac text, yes.
Yes, that's
Yes.
the main clause. You've got it. You've absolutely got it. Brilliant. Okay, we're going to move on to day 3 now. Please keep typing in the chat box. Patricia, what have you got for day 3 for us then, please?
So for the third gift, we are going to look at verb tense agreements. So grammar is an area that some students fall down in. It's often with that subject verb agreement and tenses. So an example of a subject verb agreement would be the dog barks if there is one dog. However, more than one dog becomes the dog's bark. And I think my dog is doing this on cue. It's not, not been. So it's important to use the correct tense and to be consistent in its use. For example, not jumping from past to present tense. So if we have a look at the slide, which of the sentences uses the correct verb tense accurately? So we've got the snowman. So we've got the snowman sentences. Is it the first or second sentence? So the snowman lost his hat in the blizzard, or the snowman lost his hat in the blizzard. And if you can type into the chat 1 or 2 or first or second.
So people are typing away now. We've got a vote for the second, second.
Yes.
Last, yeah.
Yeah, so that's
It's lost, yeah.
lost, yes.
Yeah.
That's great. Right, can we reveal the next sentence about Eddie? So Eddie the elf sit on a shelf, or Eddie the elf sat on a shelf.
And what about those tenses are different then? Yeah, everyone's saying the second one.
The second one, yes, so it would be the second.
So it's not
Because you've
current
got,
tense, it's past.
it's past tense,
Yeah,
yes.
brilliant. People are now putting that sat as past. Excellent. Sits would be
Yes,
the first one. Yes, absolutely. Sits,
yes.
exactly. Okay, lovely.
And then we've got the reindeer. So the hungry reindeers eat the carrots and pull the sleigh, or the hungry reindeers ate the carrots and pulled the sleigh. And
Everyone's
again,
saying second
yeah,
again.
it
Yes.
is, yeah. So so it's just to make sure that to get your learners to check for the correct tenses. So Helen, that was a quick overview of verb tense agreements. We are now what are we moving on to for day 4?
I will share in a second. The first thing I want to say before we move on, though, is that my experience as well is that people rely on word spell and grammar checkers as they're typing, and they don't always pick up on absolutely everything. So this is where kind of proofreading comes in to get the correct verb tense agreements, because we can become over reliant on those word spell and grammar checkers. So just to highlight that, that's all. But anyway, I'm going to talk about day 4 in relation to countable and uncountable nouns. And same again, I'm going to ask everybody to consider what they're able. If you're able to, let us know in the chat what's the difference between a countable and uncountable noun? What are they?
We've
And
got some
why?
not sures on this one.
Right. Well, I mean, why on earth are we asking about them? It's something I hear all the time on television, and in spoken English mostly, people using the wrong terms to describe countable and uncountable nouns. It's a bit of a bugbear of mine, but that because it's so prevalent, it's being kind of positively reinforced. If you hear, for example, BBC News reader saying the wrong word for something, it stays with you and you think it's correct. So anybody got anything in the chat for us, Patricia, before I move on?
Yeah, sorry, Helen, I'm just coughing too much.
It's all right. I'll have a look. It's
Stand
okay.
uncountable. I'm so sorry.
Stand uncountable, table countable. So people are starting to, yeah, you cannot name the number of something. Countable can be counted. Yes, exactly. The 5 gold rings, 7 loads of Leaping. Thank you, brilliant. But you can number the cats. Right, okay. So noun is a person, place, concept, or thing which can be counted or not. And that's the point of today's session. Can you count them or can you not count them? So examples of what this looks like. If a noun is a person, place, thing, or concept, anything really from a computer to a teacher to a gift to a party, the reason we bring the concept of counting them applies to which adjective we use to describe how many of them there are. And in this case, please remember that I'm referring to the number or amount of them. To be grammatically correct, if the noun is countable, then we use the word number. If the noun is uncountable, then we use the word amount. So let's demo this with some examples. So this first list of nouns, can you count them? Please use the team's reaction, thumbs up if you think we can. Can you count these nouns? Patricia, I'm going to have to ask you to tell me if we're getting any thumbs ups.
We are getting thumbs up, yes.
Brilliant. Yes, we can
We're
count
getting
these.
yeses and thumbs up.
Great. You can have more than one of them. You can have 2 snowmen, 4 gloves, 10 icicles, and so on. So we therefore use the word number for these nouns. However, the nouns in this second list can't be counted without them being put into something. So, for example, the wine needs to be put into a bottle or a glass to be counted. The snow needs to be a flake or a drift. Because you can't count snow or ice. We have to talk about or use the word amount when we talk about them. The amount of wine, the amount of ice, the amount of snow, the amount of hail, the number of coats, icicles, etc., the amount of snow or hail. Does it sound odd if I say the number of snow or the amount of coats? If it does, it's because they're not grammatically correct. So please think about what you hear and what you say in the future. I do hear a lot of the number of something that's uncountable or the amount of something that is countable. Please try and ensure that you're using the correct adjective for the correct noun. Any other questions or comments about countable or uncountable nouns?
Nothing's come into the chat.
Okie dokie, let's move on to the gift for day 5 then, Patricia. What is it?
Right, so for day 5 is spelling strategies. So these strategies that we're going to look at are ways and techniques used to help with spelling. And these are just some ideas and some activities. So we've got sound out the word. So break down to morphemes, syllables, and use phonics, looking at prefixes, suffixes, and root words. Think about how a word looks, getting the shape, getting the look of it. Is there a mnemonic, a memory sentence? So this one's for because big elephants cannot always use small exits. Does anybody know any others that you can quickly type into the chat?
We used to say big elephants cannot always understand small elephants.
All right, it was always cannot use small exits.
It
And
doesn't
then
matter what words you use, does it? Just so long as it sticks.
and then you've got the one collar and two socks. And has anybody heard of that one as well?
On a
So you've
shirt, you've
got
got one collar and two
two
sleeves,
socks.
and it's necessary.
All right, I always said, I don't know where we got socks from, though. It was all for necessary. It was one collar, so it was
Uh-huh.
the C,
Well, one collar,
and
two sleeves on a shirt, you see.
two socks. Why
Oh,
socks?
interesting. Different way, just different words and different ways of doing things.
We've got some people typing into the chat as well.
Yeah.
I remember how
Beautiful.
to spell beautiful, B-E-U-T.
Beautiful. Skizzers. I always used to say skizzers as a child to remind myself on that was one coat, two shoes. There's another
I've
one for
got two
necessary.
shoes.
Yeah. Um, yeah, it was always skizzers for me. And I only recently learned how to spell diarrhea, but I haven't made a mnemonic for it up for it.
With my daughter, I did things like veggie table.
Yes,
And when we'd always break it down Wednesday, and even now
yes,
we'll go the veggie table.
yes,
Just a standing joke. But yeah,
yes.
it does work, definitely
The
work.
stick, it works because the stick, doesn't it?
Yeah. So we've also got oh, there's another couple coming in there.
My grandma always says veggie table. Yes. Lovely. Love that.
Um, so also we've got user dictionary. So not only does this help with how the word looks, but you're also having to think about those first few letters. And then when you start thinking of what it starts with, the rest of the letters do come easier.
Yeah.
Um, and then we've got the learn, cover, write, and check. So based on the more you see and spell a word, the more we're going to remember you, the more you're going to remember it.
Can I just quickly jump in there? The shape of the word is really important because that's why road signs are in upper and lower case and not all uppercase. Because as you're going past a word quickly in your car, it's easier to read it if you see the shape of it and how the word looks. Is a really good strategy for remembering how it's spelt as well, and being able to read it more easily.
That's great. Thank you, Helen. Right, so we're going to move on to day 6. And this is apostrophes. So there are two types of apostrophes. Firstly, those for possessions, so ownership and belonging. And the purpose of them is to show that one thing belongs or is connected to something. For example, the dog's toy. I think I'm working on a dog theme today as opposed to a Christmas theme. Secondly, the apostrophe for omission. This is where you leave out the letter. So I'm a student instead of I am a student. Let's instead of let us. So with that in mind, let's have a look at the activity. I'm going to give you a few minutes to answer. If you might want to type some of them into the chat, and then we'll go through them.
We could kind of number them, couldn't we? 1, 2, 3, 4,
4,
5,
5, 6,
6.
yes.
Yeah. And it could be a P or an O for each one, do you think?
Yes, yeah, just you could do one and then put if it's a P or O, or if
Yeah.
it's a P and O.
So I have people typing. Does something belong to somebody and therefore is a possessive apostrophe, or are there letters or is the part of the word missing, so it's an omission one?
And I think sometimes just like going over that with learners and students is actually a good idea because they do forget.
Yeah,
They know what apostrophes are, but the understanding of it, they do sometimes forget that.
yeah. So we've got one is coming in as possessive in the chat. We'll not reveal any answers yet, shall we not? Just to
No,
we'll give
give a
people a
few
minute or
minutes.
two. Yeah. I didn't realize Paul had a reindeer, by the way. I wonder why Paul's reindeer is so cute. So we're talking about the apostrophes that are missing here rather than the apostrophes that are there. I think number 3 is a bit of a testing one, isn't it?
Yes.
Brilliant. People are popping all their answers in so they can
Oh,
check it
that's
once
great. Yeah.
yeah, they can check their own once we start putting the answers in. Just tell me when you want me to start putting the answers in.
You could start now. I think if you just click, it should, I think, reveal them slowly. So we've got the possession. So my dad's name is Amir, so it belongs to Amir. So we've got possession. Paul's reindeer is very cute. So again, it belongs to Paul.
Lucky Paul.
Um, well, it depends on, I don't know what how difficult reindeers are to look after. Um, I found a present and it's apparently Charlie's gift.
So
So
it's normally a big problem for some learners who don't quite get that it's might or might not have an apostrophe on it, might it not?
yeah, so it's always a if it's a it is, then
Yeah,
it's always going to be that it's for omission. Yeah, so you've got that. But a lot of learners do it's and let's or seem to be the ones that when I was teaching English was the ones that were the most common.
yeah. And there's only an apostrophe in it if it is, but it could be it's without an
It
apostrophe, couldn't it?
it could be, yes.
Hmm. Cool.
Um, Next one you've got possession because Antonio's grandma speaks Italian, English, and Arabic.
She's
Then you've
very
got
clever, isn't she?
my sister's friends coming to visit in an hour. So that's possession. And what's the time, please, is omission. What is the time, please? And that's where that would go.
Lovely. Before we move on, can I quickly ask about if the word ends with an S? So, for example, my friend James, if I was talking about James's car,
Right.
where does the possessive apostrophe go?
Well, there's different rules for this. And this is, I think, where but it would be, it would be after the S. So you would
Yeah.
have that
You tend to
apostrophe.
say James's car to imply that there might be another S on the end there, don't? And sometimes you will see apostrophe after the S and another S there.
Yes, you do
Is that
sometimes
right?
see that. Yes, you can
Yeah.
see that. So that
So
that that can be the case.
yeah, interesting. Sorry, I'm really sad. I think it's so interesting. People are still typing, so I'm not just not moving on. Yeah. So quite right, Oliver. It's either after the S or you do put it after the S and then add another S because you say James's. I would say it's James. I'm going in James's car. Um, so yes,
So it
either
can
of
be
those are
either of
right.
those would be correct. Yeah, you could
Yeah.
have both. Yeah.
So cool. Okay, moving
Right,
on.
so moving on to Helen. So what have we got for day 7?
Yeah, thanks, Patricia. So today, day 7, all about word classes, a term many people will be familiar with. So let's start by asking everyone to consider what they already know. So please pop into the chat as per what are we talking about when we say word classes? So please tell us what you know about word classes in the chat. Thank you, Andrew. Yes, nouns, verbs, etc. Adjectives. Brilliant. Thanks, Emma's added adjectives there. Words we've been using today already. And I often think, why is it important for us to know that these exist and what they are? And I will talk about that. They've never registered as classes to Oliver. That's fine. That's absolutely fine. So I'm gonna keep going. Thank you for your input so far. Sort of sharing our definition of what this is to get us started. There are more than 7. We're just looking at 7 today. So it'd be interesting to see which ones people know and if we're going to include them. So we've had some in the chat already. If you think of any others that haven't already been mentioned, can you please add them? They're also known as parts of speech. I used to be involved in ESOL teacher training as well. So any ESOL teachers, which is why we did ask at the start, ESOL learning and English learning for ESOL or English speakers of other languages, grammar is really important and their understanding of different word classes and how they work are really interesting. Articles have been popped into there. That's interesting. Any other word classes that people are aware of that might come up in our 7? We have pronouns, lovely. I'm going to keep going because time is ticking on. So the examples we're going to share, I'm going to talk through. So I'm going to talk about nouns first, something we've already mentioned in relation to counting them, uncountable and countable nouns. Example could include actual things, such as a pen or a car, places, such as a hotel or a city, people, such as a sister, my doctor, or abstract things, such as dreams or ideas. The second one I'm talking about are verbs, so action, doing, or being words, such as walking, sitting, dancing, drinking. That's that festive theme back again. The next one I'm going to talk about is adverbs. And like the sound they do, they add something extra or additional information to the verb. They add to the verb, makes them an adverb. So examples include quickly, yesterday, never, rarely, extremely. Moving on to adjectives, we've been talking about these already, describing or naming words. They relate to nouns specifically, but they can relate to all sorts. Examples include festive, gorgeous, cold, tasty, windy as it is in Newcastle today. And Patricia will talk about these in more detail later. The next word class, conjunctions. Just like the sound like they are, they're the connecting words we use in sentences to make links between ideas and clarify meaning. So examples include for, and, but, because, however, even though. So sometimes they're not just one word, they're a couple of words together. When writing, it's obviously important to use the correct conjunction for the purpose and meaning of the sentence. And depending upon the level of the writing, the most appropriate level of formality should always also be used. The sixth word class somebody mentioned is a pronoun. These words replace the noun and can make writing flow more easily. The words such as he, she, they, many, everybody. And I still remember learning writing as a child, and I would talk about my dad did this, and then my dad did that, and then I went here with my dad, and then my dad and I did this, and pronouns up the level of the writing. My dad did this, and then he did that, and we went there. Using pronouns just changes the level of the writing a bit. The last class I'm going to talk about is prepositions. These tell us where or when something or someone is, or provides additional information about a context or the purpose. So example of prepositions include above, below, despite, excluding, outside, and until. Just going to stop and look at the chat, see if anything else has come in. Yes, so adverbs, pronouns, conjunctions came in as well. Brilliant. Thank you so much for that. Okay, enough about word classes for the moment, but if you've got any questions, please do put them in the chat. We're going to move on to day 8, which looks at prefixes and suffixes, parts of words. And I'm going to move straight into what they are because we've already had them mentioned by Patricia. You can see on the screen now. So they change the meaning of root words and can be put into groups with similar meanings. For example, adding the suffix im or in normally signifies no, not, or without, and pre signifies before. Adding the suffix ful at the end of a word signifies the full of, and ness tells us about the state of or condition of something. So to explain that in context, you can see some examples on the screen now. The root words here are in lilac, and the suffix and prefixes are going to be in black. So you can see how these examples are used at the beginning of the beginning of the root words alters the words slightly. Instead of winter, it's midwinter. Dis tells you something about that. It's a negative aspect. Dis would be to disagree with somebody. To reappear means something's happening again, and tells you something about different about usual. It's a negative connotation again. And then that second list, you can see examples of suffixes used at the end of root words to alter their meanings. Again, with the root word in the lilac font again. I think the final example also shows how we can add both a prefix and a suffix to a root word. It's pretty remarkable, I think. Any questions or comments about prefixes and suffixes? Just going to pause a second looking at the chat just to see if anyone has any questions, comments, or other examples they would like to share. Yes, inflammable. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So students knowing and people in general knowing which prefix or suffix to use in context is really important. And teachers knowing what a prefix or a suffix does can help everybody know how to use them effectively and correctly. Okay, Patricia, what have you got for day 9?
So for day 9, we're going to be looking at adjectives. So an adjective is a word that modifies or describes a noun or pronoun. And there are many types of adjectives that can be used to describe qualities of someone or something. For example, I like sparkly decorations. Sparkly is the adjective as it describes the decoration. And you're probably all now visualizing some kind of sparkling decoration. So if you can, so in this activity, what we have is we have simple, comparative, and superlative. So while adjectives describe the quality, a comparative is used to compare two things, and a superlative is more than two things. So I like to think of them as stages or degrees. So this is an activity which you can take and use with your learners at any time as well. But the activity will be to fill in the blanks. You can extend this type of activity by creating sentences for each word that you add. So if we have a look,
So I've put the first one in there just to get us going. So
right,
we'll
so
ask
there's
people
this,
to.
it's where the spaces are. So we've got adjective cute, the comparative would be cuter, but the superlative would be the cutest. So what do we think the next line is for that adjective? If we've got the comparative of fatter and
Yeah, people are
fattest.
putting fat into the chat.
And I think sometimes just little refreshers like these for us and for learners and students is just good to, it just consolidates that what we already know.
Absolutely. And I mean, I've had adult learners say to me, why was I not taught this at school? Not your fault. It was just what was in fashion at the time you were at school, whether you were taught this or not. I know my youngest niece was learning in primary school not that long ago, but adult English learners, even with English as their first language, might not have been taught the comparative and superlative versions. So yeah, people are popping all of their answers into the chat now, so I'm going to start going through them and you can talk through them.
Right, so we've got, yep, fat, comparative fatter and fattest. Then we've got thin, thinner, thinnest, sweet, sweeter, sweetest, large, larger and largest, soft, softer, softest, and full, fuller, fullest, warm, warmer, warmest, and cold, colder, coldest. But as I say, you can then extend this activity by getting them to make sentences with the words that they've now included. So hopefully that's just a little useful activity. So now we're going.
Well,
Has anything come in the chat, Helen?
just all the correct answers.
That's fantastic. So now we're going to move on to day 10. So in my experience, the word definite and indefinite article often scares learners. And when they finally understand this, they are really surprised and realize how simple it actually is. So firstly, just to clear what the definition is. So the definite article is always the, and it introduces the noun phrase such as the pen is on the desk. The indefinite article uses the word a or an. They both have the same meaning, but the way we use them depends on the sound at the beginning of the next word. So, for example, if the next word starts with a consonant, you use the word a, such as a car, a book. However, when the next word starts with a vowel, for an example, the word apple or insect, it becomes an apple, an insect. And I think sometimes just visually seeing this, I remember with my learners showing it was one class in particular, and they were like, oh, I've never seen that before. That just makes so much sense. And just seeing it visually on the board did help, but they never had it explained. So what I'd like you to do with this one is just to see if you can work out which one it is. Is it an or is it an a for the indefinite article?
You said something about the sound of the word there as well, didn't you? The sound of the second word. And would you ever have a consonant that doesn't sound, that sounds like a vowel, for example? Has that softer sound?
Such as, um,
I'm thinking H's don't always sound hard, do they?
well, that's what came to my head when you said softer
Because you
sound,
could
but
say
it
a
would still
hat.
be,
If you're talking about a hat, for example, it would be a hat. But
or
if you're
in
talking about
an
what hour
hour.
in an hour, yes. Yes, hour. So H can sometimes sound like, um, yes, holistic is a softer sound. I'm just reading through what's in the chat here. Um, historic and historic is sometimes used in BBC English. It is right. You're
Yes,
correct there,
yeah, that is, yeah.
Oliver. Yeah, thank you. So it's not just it's not just the consonant. And sorry, it's not just the vowel. You could have a softer
There,
sound
there is more,
H.
yeah, there is more sort of definitions into it. As a general rule, that's
Mm,
what it tends to be.
yeah,
But but there are, yeah, there are exceptions.
yeah. Okay, do you want If people have put the answers in there, would you like the answers on the table yet?
Yes, we can go through those answers. So we've got a bauble, a dog, an elf, a tree, and an olive.
Got some
And
more
then,
examples
yeah,
there as
we did.
well.
We had an icicle, a snowman, an iguana, an umbrella, and a present.
An iguana wearing a Christmas hat. What more can we want in life? Okay, are we ready to move on to day 11?
Yes, so if we can go on to day 11, Helen, that would be fantastic. So this one is the power of punctuation. So using punctuation helps the reader to clearly understand the message that's being conveyed. And I used to like to tell my learners that punctuation refers to all the symbols that enhance sentences to make it easier to understand and to read. So if you look at the example and think about the meaning they have with the missing or incorrect punctuation, even a small comma can greatly change the meaning of a sentence. So for example, if you can put on the next bit, I think, Helen. So we've got my hobbies are cooking, my family, and my dog. He has trouble making friends. He has trouble making friends. So you can see within these sentences the let's eat grandpa, let's eat grandpa. They have very, very different and could have serious consequences if you didn't get those quite right. Um, so um, Next, we have 12 punctuation marks. These are the most commonly used ones in English. So we've got the full stop, the question mark, exclamation mark, comma, semicolon, colon, dash, brackets, apostrophe, speech marks, and ellipses. Um, so just to go through some activities for punctuation, just to think of different things. You could match the symbols and the name and the description. So you could cut these up and get learners to match them together to which symbol matches with the description, which matches with the key punctuation. This is good, especially for EAL learners and learners who might need a refresher on the meaning. Another idea is to take punctuation from a text or passage of writing and get the learners to put in the correct punctuation. You could complete a writing task or a sample assessment or something like that with errors and then get the learners to mark for the spelling, punctuation, and grammar. This gets them familiar with the mark scheme and what they're expected to include in their writing, but it also gets them to think about the format and the layout as well. And you could have your learners go over with their peers and proofread each other and edit each other's work, because sometimes you don't see it in your own, but when you look at somebody else's, you do. So it's getting them used to what that looks like. And also having a checklist, make sure that everything is that they cover everything, and reminders such as always you always use capital letters for places and names. So that's just a quick refresher on the power of punctuation marks.
It's very powerful, and same again. Our word spell and grammar and punctuation checkers don't always pick these up. So nice overview. What have you got for the 12th and final day then, Patricia?
So for the 12th and final day, we have homophones. So a homophone is two or more words having the same pronunciation but different meanings. So we're going to have a look at these sentences, and as we go through each, if you could type the correct word or spelling into the chat. So you're firstly identifying which word is the homophone, which is incorrect, and then what the correct one is. And they all have a bit of a Christmas theme. So we've got the deer needed to wrap up warm, as Mrs. Claus said they were allowed to go out to go and play in the snow.
We do have people typing, so
We'll give it a few
we'll
moments
give it a
to.
minute. Yeah. So we've got words like dear spelled incorrectly, wrap spelled incorrectly, and allowed with all of the correct spellings.
That's fantastic.
Just tell me when you want the second.
That's great. Could we have the next sentence? Well done.
Everyone's got them. Brilliant.
So, meanwhile, she was making a cranberry sauce for dinner, but needed to go to buy some berries.
So we've got sauce and berries coming up with the
Yep.
correct this
There is
SAU.
3 in each one, so aha, yeah.
Yes. Now people are pulling out the buy as well. Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks, Julie. Buy with an exclamation mark. See how easy it is to miss them, though.
It is easy to miss them.
Absolutely.
And the next one, Santa peeled potatoes and carrots while having a little wine.
Poor Santa. We've got peeled
Peeled
carrots
carrots.
and wine coming up.
Excellent. And everyone's getting faster.
Oh, well into it. Maybe he cut his finger peeling the veg. Oliver's suggesting, and he did
well,
have
yes.
a little wine. Yes, absolutely. He might have had a little wine. You are so right.
Depends on how many potatoes he's peeling as well. And for
And
how
if he has
many.
hurt himself, how happy he is doing those jobs. Okay, are we ready to move on?
Yeah. Eddie the elf was asked to piece together a broken toy and knew it was important to get it right.
So we've got
Yeah.
peace, new, and right popping up.
Yep, that's
Same
correct.
again, the grammar checker. It's just it's de-skilling us because we know how easy it is to just mistype something, and if it hasn't got a squiggly line under it, it's accurate. Is kind of where we feel in our confidence in spelling grammar checkers, isn't it?
That's true. And as I say, if the homophones are one of those that catch people out because the word itself is actually spelled correctly, it's just the wrong
Meaning,
word, wrong
wrong
meaning. Yeah.
choice, wrong word choice. Yeah,
Yeah, wrong choice.
brilliant. Poor Santa and poor Eddie.
Right. So
Okay, so I'm going to do a quick summary to close. We've had a bit of a whistle-stop tour through the topics, which should help you to understand the conventions of punctuation, spelling, and grammar and be able to more confidently apply them. Using the correct meta-language, the language related to English, is also really helpful to help us remember the rules and conventions. But before we move on any further, I'm just going to do another quick poll. We've got an evaluation form that we're going to ask you to complete. But before we do that, I just want a little bit of fun and ask you to let us know how festive are you feeling today? Please let us know what your answer is to that just before we go on to the close, please. Again, it's anonymous, so we're not checking that you definitely have improved your festive feelings today, but using a theme, I think, is really useful to help make it stick. So that's why we've got that theme going on today. I'm going to close the poll shortly.
I think some people have had issues with the poll.
Have there?
Yeah, some people are typing into the chat, I think.
Oh, good. Good. I'll close it now and I'll go back to the chat because that's where we'll see the answers.
So yeah, so they're coming into the chat now.
Brilliant. Somewhat excellent. Okay, I'm going to hand back to you, Patricia.
Yes, I think with the poll, it was just a bit delayed. So
there was a delay, yeah. So I'm just going to get
your screen. Oh, you're copying that from the screen.
Yeah.
Right. So thank you very much for attending today. So we are keen to evaluate our session and would like you to take a minute to just complete our short evaluation form. You can do this via a smartphone or tablet just by scanning the QR code. And I think Helen's also putting the link into the chat as well. This will help us improve and develop our practice for the future and for professional development sessions. So
And
hopefully you've enjoyed this, and thank you very much. And I
yes,
love
thank
the
you so much. We've got some wonderful gifts coming into the chat now. So yeah, we are asking for a lot of feedback on what we've done this week. Thank you so much for spending the time and participating. You've been absolutely fabulous. And let us know what other type of professional development sessions you'd like us to do in the future. We're always asking for input. We want to put on interesting and useful sessions for yourselves. So thank you for attending, and thank you in advance for letting us know what other things you'd like us to do.
Yeah, thank you everyone, and hopefully you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Have a lovely Christmas break, and we look forward to working with you more in the new year.
And we will send the PowerPoint slides out, and the recordings will be all available in the new year on the professional development team website on YouTube. Thank you. I'm going to stop the recording now.
Thanks, Patricia. Thanks, everybody. Take care.